To understand the Adeptus Mechanicus is to understand a fundamental paradox of the Imperium of Man. Humanity's future is chained to technology it can no longer comprehend, and the sole guardians of that technology worship a god entirely their own. This is not merely an organization, it is the cult Mechanicus, a faith born from the ashes of a golden age and forged in the fires of survival. Long before the Emperor's Great Crusade, Mars was a thriving colony, a co-equal mother world with Terra during humanity's golden age. But the age of strife plunged the galaxy into chaos. Warp storms cut Mars off, its society collapsed, and its carefully terraformed environment was scoured away, returning the planet to a lethal radioactive desert. From this existential crisis, a new doctrine emerged, the cult of the machine god. Its followers, the first tech priests, believed that only through selfless dedication to technology could they survive. They salvaged ancient machines, built protective shelters, and defended them against mutants and raiders. Their survival against impossible odds was seen as divine vindication, cementing their faith. This was the genesis of the Mechanicum, the precursor to the Adeptus Mechanicus, which unified Mars under a single theocratic rule, erecting the first great forge cities and the temple of all knowledge. The core tenets of this faith are starkly different from the imperial creed. They are encapsulated in the Credo Omnicia. There is no truth in flesh, only betrayal. There is no strength in flesh, only weakness. There is no constancy in flesh, only decay. There is no certainty in flesh but death. This is not just a philosophy, it is a divine mandate. The flesh is a transient, flawed vessel to be overcome. Thus, tech priests undergo extensive cybernetic augmentation, replacing their biological parts with mechanical ones. The more machine they become, the closer they are to their god. Their ultimate object of worship is the machine god or omnicia, the embodiment of all knowledge. For them, knowledge is not just power, it is the literal manifestation of divinity, and every piece of technology is a sacred relic. When the Emperor of Mankind, fresh from unifying Terra, came to Mars, he did not come as a conqueror. He arrived in a golden ship and performed what were seen as miracles, such as repairing a machine with a touch. To many tech priests, he was the living avatar of the Omnicia. They had prophesied that this recognition led to the Treaty of Mars, or Treaty of Olympus Mons. In exchange for supplying the armies and starships for the Emperor's Great Crusade, the Mechanicum was granted unparalleled autonomy. Religious freedom. They were exempt from the imperial truth, the Emperor's state-enforced atheism, and could continue worshipping the machine god. Political sovereignty. They retained control over Mars and all their scattered forge worlds. A dual-headed empire. The imperial Aquila was refashioned with two heads, one for Terra and one for Mars, symbolizing this unique partnership. This treaty created the Adeptus Mechanicus as we know it, a fully integrated adepta of the Imperium, yet an empire within an empire, bound by treaty but following its own path. The driving purpose of the Adeptus Mechanicus is the quest for knowledge. In a universe where innovation is heresy, the only path to advancement is to recover the lost technologies of the past, specifically the standard template constructs, STCs. STCs are sacred relics from the dark age of technology, containing the blueprints for nearly every piece of technology the Imperium uses, from lost guns to titans. The discovery of even a fragment of an STC is a momentous, holy event, pursued with fanatical zeal by explorator fleets sent out into the void. This quest defines them more than anything else, shaping their interactions with the galaxy. However, their methods are not scientific. They are ritualistic. As one analysis aptly puts it, the cult Mechanicus operates like a cargo cult. They repeat rote rituals and incantations, like the sacred application of oils and the chanting of litanies, to operate technology they no longer fundamentally understand. They know the process works, but the underlying science has been lost, replaced by dogma. So, we have our foundation, a technologically supreme, deeply religious culture, born in a wasteland and bound to the Imperium by a divine figure and a pragmatic treaty. But this alliance would soon be tested to its absolute limit. In our next part, we will witness the galaxy tear itself apart, and with it, the Mechanicus itself, in the cataclysmic event known as the Horus Heresy and the Schism of Mars. We left off with the Adeptus Mechanicus at its zenith, a sovereign power allied with the Emperor's Great Crusade. But this golden age was built on a fragile foundation. When the Imperium was torn in two by the Horus Heresy, Mars did not simply choose a side. It was ripped apart from within in a conflict known as the Schism of Mars, or the Binary Crusade. Even before Horus's betrayal, factions within the Mechanicum were growing restless. Some tech priests, like the conservative fabricator General Kelbier Hal, felt the Treaty of Mars had made them subservient to Terra, stifling their independence. Others were jealous of the Emperor's favor towards his own scientists, like those in the Adeptus Astartes, who were permitted to maintain and even modify their own war gear, a freedom forbidden to the Mechanicum. The catalyst for the schism was a discovery in the depths of Mars itself. Explorators uncovered a vast, sealed vault containing forbidden Dark Age of technology artifacts and data cores filled with knowledge deemed too dangerous for recovery. Fabricator General Kelbier Hal was tempted by these secrets, seeing in them a path to power unshackled from the Emperor's constraints. Into this atmosphere of discontent stepped the arch-traitor, Horus. He promised Kelbier Hal and his allies exactly what they desired: total independence for Mars, unrestricted access to all recovered knowledge, and the freedom to pursue research without the Emperor's hypocritical prohibitions. This was an offer Kelbier Hal could not refuse. In a secret ceremony, he and other high-ranking tech priests pledged their forge worlds to the War Master, forming the core of what would become the Dark Mechanicus. Their betrayal was not born of a belief in chaos, initially, but of pure, logical ambition for technological transcendence. The heresy began in earnest across the galaxy, and on Mars the traitors made their move. Kelbier Hal initiated the Death of Innocence, a system-wide scrap code virus. This malicious, warp-tainted data stream bypassed firewalls and corrupted machine spirits across the planet. Loyalist titans and knights went berserk, defense grids shut down or fired upon allies, and entire forge complexes fell into pandemonium. In the ensuing chaos, traitor Skitarii and titan legios like the Legio Mortis turned on their loyalist brethren. The first and most symbolic strike was the massacre at Olympus Mons, where the seat of Martian power was violently seized by Kelbier Hal's forces. But the Mechanicum was not wholly lost. Loyalists under tech priests like Zagreus Kane and the Archmagos Dominus Coriel Zeth fought back. Zeth, who rejected the mysticism of the cult Mechanicus in favor of pure science, defended her forge, the Magma City, with fierce determination. The most significant resistance was led by Biologus Adept Archon Land, who, alongside the Emperor's own custodians, fought a guerrilla war across the Martian plains. However, the Loyalists were scattered, outnumbered, and crippled by the scrap code attack. They were driven into isolated redoubts, fighting a desperate, losing battle for survival against the relentless traitor forces. As the war on Mars raged, the primary conflict reached its climax at the Siege of Terra. The fate of both the Imperium and the Mechanicus hung in the balance. Upon the death of the Emperor's loyal Primarch, Sanguinius, a psychic wave of rage and pain erupted across the galaxy. This death scream was so potent it briefly stunned every psyker and disrupted the warp itself. On Mars, it caused a momentary lapse in the traitors' coordination. Seizing this opportunity, the Primarch Rogel Dorn dispatched a massive Imperial fleet, led by the Imperial Fists and the Space Marine Legion of the Alpha Legion, who at this critical juncture remained loyal to retake Mars. In a brutal campaign of liberation, they broke the traitor hold on the planet, systematically purging forge after forge. The Schism of Mars ended in a loyalist victory, but the cost was apocalyptic. The planet was left scarred and smoldering, its infrastructure in ruins and its population decimated. The Mechanicus had been broken in body and spirit. In the aftermath, the Loyalist Mechanicum was formally integrated into the Imperium as the Adeptus Mechanicus to ensure its loyalty would never be questioned again. The traitors who survived, including Kelbier Hal, fled Mars, taking their dark knowledge and blasphemous experiments with them to the Eye of Terror, where they would become the fully realized Dark Mechanicus, forever wedded to the powers of chaos. The schism created a wound that has never healed. It explains the Adeptus Mechanicus's deep-seated paranoia, its dogmatic resistance to innovation, and its eternal vigilance against the heretical mirror that is the Dark Mechanicus. Mars was saved, but it was a hollow, broken victory. The Imperium's technological heart had been gravely wounded, and the path to recovery would require rigid dogma and an unyielding quest for what was lost. Later we will examine the structure of this new Adeptus Mechanicus, exploring the Forge worlds, the tech priest hierarchies, and the eternal quest for knowledge that defines them in the modern age. The schism of Mars left the Adeptus Mechanicus shattered and paranoid. To survive, it had to rebuild not just its forges but its very identity. It transformed from the independent Mechanicum into the Adeptus Mechanicus, the indispensable technological arm of the Imperium. This part explores the complex structure of this new entity and the sacred, all-consuming quest that gives it purpose. Post-heresy, the integration with the Imperium was made absolute. The Mechanicus became one of the founding adepta of the Imperium, alongside groups like the Administratum and the Inquisition. The Fabricator General of Mars earned a permanent seat on the Senatorum Imperialis, the High Lords of Terra, cementing their political power. But internally, they remain a theocracy. The Fabricator General is both the political leader and the supreme religious figure. Beneath them is the Martian Parliament, a vast, often stagnant body of magi who debate doctrine and policy. This structure is replicated across the empire of Forge worlds, industrial planets dedicated entirely to manufacturing for the Imperium, each ruled by its own fabricator local. At the individual level, a tech priest's life is a journey of replacing the sinful flesh with a blessed machine. This begins with the sacred unctions of induction and the first, minor augmentations. As a tech priest proves their worth and accumulates knowledge, they ascend the ranks, undergoing more extensive surgeries. These ranks are highly specialized. An engineer maintains battlefield equipment. A lex mechanic catalogs data. A biologist studies alien lifeforms. An explorator leads expeditions into the unknown. At the highest levels, Muggos wield immense power, overseeing entire forge complexes or research disciplines. This path of cybernetic ascension is the ultimate expression of their faith, a lifelong ritual of self-purification. Within this rigid structure, philosophical factions vie for influence. The most prominent are the conservative dogmatists, who believe that any innovation is heresy and that only knowledge from the Golden Age is pure. They enforce the doctrine of the sin of innovation with fanatical zeal. Opposing them are the progressive alchemists, who, while still reverent of the past, believe in the cautious adaptation and recombination of existing technologies to create new solutions. This is not true invention but a form of technological alchemy. And then there are the more extreme sects, like the electro-priests of the Corpuscarii and Fulgurite cults, who reject mechanical augmentation in favor of cultivating the body's own electrochemical energy, seeing it as the purest expression of the motive force. The single most important activity for the Adeptus Mechanicus is the quest for knowledge. In a practical sense, this means the relentless, galaxy-spanning search for standard template constructs, or STCs. These are not merely blueprints. They are considered holy texts. An STC system could, in theory, provide optimized designs for anything a human colony might need, adapted to any environment. The discovery of a single STC fragment, like the one that provided the design for the Space Marine Land Raider, can redefine Imperial warfare. To find these relics, the Mechanicus dispatches explorator fleets. These are vast armadas containing Arc Mechanicus ships, Scitarii maniples and legions of tech priests. They venture beyond the borders of the Imperium, braiding Xenos empires, warp anomalies and uncharted space in a sacred pilgrimage for lost data. But what happens when the keepers of technology no longer understand how it works? The Adeptus Mechanicus operates as a cargo cult on a galactic scale. They perform meticulous rituals, the application of sacred unguents, the chanting of binary canticles, the waving of incense burners, to appease the machine spirit within a piece of technology. To an outsider, this seems like superstition. But in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, it is a functional necessity. Belief has power, and these rituals of maintenance are a form of psychoconditioning that stabilizes ancient and temperamental systems. They know the ritual to start a tank but not the underlying physics of its engine. This is the great tragedy of the Mechanicus. They are priests first and engineers a distant second. The recovered knowledge is treated with utmost sanctity. It is stored in the data vaults of Mars and other forge worlds, guarded by cyberconstructs and auto-defenses. The most powerful vessels of the fleet, the Dark Mechanicus ships, are said to contain fragments of sentient AI from the Dark Age, granting them capabilities far beyond Imperial norm. That this hoarding of knowledge is both a strength and a critical weakness. It allows the Imperium to function, but it also means that the loss of a single forge world, like Griffin 4 to the Tyranids, can set the Imperial war machine back irreparably. They are not building for the future, they are desperately trying to preserve a fading past. So, we have a vast, hierarchical and deeply divided organization, bound by ritual and driven by a desperate search for relics. But this quest is not a peaceful one. It is enforced by armies of steel and faith. Afterwards, we will march to war with the forges of war, examining the Skitarii legions, the Titan legios, and the night houses that serve the machine god. The quest for knowledge is not a peaceful pilgrimage. It is a war fought in the lethal silence of dead space hulks and across the battlefields of forgotten worlds. To secure its sacred data, the Adeptus Mechanicus deploys a military force unlike any other in the Imperium, a perfect fusion of fanatical faith and devastating technology. These are the forges of war. The most numerous and visible military arm of the Mechanicus are the Skitarii. These are not standard Imperial guardsmen. They are cybernetically enhanced soldiers, their bodies refined into perfect weapons for specific tactical roles. They are bound to the will of their commanding tech priest through neural implants, making them utterly loyal and fearless. That the Skitarii are divided into specialized cohorts. The vanguard are the assault troops, their bodies perpetually leaking radioactive energy that sickens and weakens enemies at close range. Their counterparts, the rangers, are expert marksmen, equipped with enhanced optics and long-barreled galvanic rifles that fire solid slugs with immense kinetic force. But these are just the core troops. The Skitarii roster includes horrors like the Fulgurite electro-priests, who channel bioelectricity to smite foes and seek to capture the very essence of a being's life force. Or the Sicarian infiltrators, stealth assassins who use sonic weaponry to disorient and slaughter their targets before they can even raise an alarm. If the Skitarii are the fist of the forge, then the Titans are its hammer. These are not mere tanks. They are walking cathedrals of war, so vast and powerful that they are considered living manifestations of the machine god. Each Titan houses a princeps who mines the machine, a Moderati crew to manage systems, and a choir of tech priests to tend to its arcane spirit. The Titan legions are the ultimate expression of Martian power, tracing their history back to the planet's unification wars. They are organized by class. The smallest, the Warhound, is a swift scout and hunter. The workhorse Reaver is a versatile battle titan. And the Emperor of the battlefield, the Warlord, stands as tall as a skyscraper, its weapons capable of leveling entire city blocks with a single salvo. The bond between a princeps and their titan is a deep, psychic symbiosis. To pilot one is to feel its ancient, wrathful machine spirit merge with your own mind. The most famous legions like the Legio Ignatum, the Fire Wasps, or the Legio Mortis, the Death's Heads, who tragically turned traitor, have histories as long and storied as any Space Marine chapter. Between the massed infantry of the Skitarii and the city-killing Titans exists a third pillar, the Imperial Knights. These are not directly part of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but are bound to it by ancient oaths and feudal ties. Night worlds are planets colonized during the Dark Age of technology that survived by using these massive, bipedal war machines. A knight is piloted by a single noble, who interfaces with the machine's throne mechanicum. This ancient device not only controls the knight but also implants the rider with the memories and personalities of all its previous pilots, creating a powerful sense of lineage and honor. The Questor Mechanicus houses, like the venerable House Tyrannis, swear fealty directly to the machine god and a specific forge world. In return for raw materials and technological support, they march to war alongside the Titan legions and Skitarii, forming a crucial middleweight combat arm. The war doctrine of the Adeptus Mechanicus is not based on human concepts of morale or courage. It is a cold, logical calculus of annihilation. Their battles are data-gathering exercises, and the enemy is merely a variable to be eliminated. A typical deployment begins with the Doctrina imperatives being broadcast to the Scitarii legions. Digital catechisms that optimize their cybernetics for specific tasks, enhancing their accuracy, speed, or resilience at the cost of other attributes. The Scitarii advance as a relentless, unfeeling tide, soaking up enemy fire while providing data for the larger assets. Then the Knights and Titans advance. They are the spearhead, targeting command bunkers, heavy armor, and fortifications. The battlefield is a symphony of destruction orchestrated by the overseeing tech priest, who analyzes every byte of combat data to refine their tactics in real time. For them, war is the ultimate form of prayer, a ritual to cleanse the unworthy and reclaim lost knowledge. The arsenal of the Mechanicus is as unique as its soldiers. They wield radium weaponry that poisons the air with radioactivity, and arc weapons that overload electrical systems and melt armor. Their most powerful assets include the Onager Duncrawler, a sturdy anti-aircraft and tank hunter platform, and the Castellan robot, an ancient, hulking automaton directed by a datasmith and programmed with rigid battle protocols. Every weapon, every vehicle, is a relic. To lose one is a spiritual tragedy. To capture an enemy technology, especially from the Xenos like the Necrons or the Tau, is a holy grail, a chance to reverse engineer and understand a new facet of the universe's machine logic. So, we see an institution whose military might is a direct extension of its faith, a relentless, calculating force that wages war for data and dominion. But how does this ancient, rigid organization survive in the nightmare of the 41st millennium, an era of tyrannid hive fleets and the Great Rift? In our final part, we will examine the Adeptus Mechanicus in the Dark Imperium, facing new heresies, new wars, and the controversial figure who challenges its very core, Belisarius' Call. For 10,000 years, the Adeptus Mechanicus endured, its rituals unchanged, its dogma unchallenged. It became a bastion of tradition in an imperium sliding into superstition and decay. But the galaxy has been broken anew. The birth of the Great Rift has created a Dark Imperium, a terrifying era that forces even the most rigid institutions to adapt or die. For the cult of the machine, this crisis is embodied by one brilliant, controversial, and perhaps heretical figure, Belisarius' Call. The Great Rift did not just isolate Forge worlds, it challenged the very foundation of the Mechanicus's logic. Warp-tainted phenomena like the Psi-storms and the Cicatrix Maledictum itself are anathema to the cold, binary logic of the machine. Worlds like Griffin 4 were lost to the Tyranids, while others like Metallica found themselves on the front line against the Death Guard and the Plague God Nurgle. The war for Metallica was a particular horror. The clean, sterile forges of the planet were invaded by a pathogen that corroded metal and twisted code. The Mechanicus's pure logic was defied by the chaotic, life-giving decay of Nurgle, forcing them to fight a war not just of attrition, but of fundamental reality. In this time of desperation, the ancient and brilliant Archmagos Belisarius' Call has risen to prominence. Call is an existential challenge to the Mechanicus. He does not merely recover technology, he innovates. He possesses a degree of scientific curiosity and ambition not seen since the dark age of technology, making him simultaneously the Imperium's greatest hope and the Mechanicus's worst nightmare. His resume is staggering. He was instrumental during the Horus Heresy, working under Archmagos Coriel Zeth. For 10 millennia, he has been working on his magnum opus, a project directly requested by Robert Guilliman himself, the Primaris Space Marines. The Primaris Marines are not merely improved space marines, they are a complete technological revolution. Call didn't just replicate the Emperor's work, he expanded upon it, incorporating gene seed from all 20 legions, including the traitor legions, a fact that horrifies traditionalists. To create them, he needed to break the most sacred seals. He unsealed the Raptor Imperialis template and, most controversially, delved into the Xenorite practice of studying and integrating alien technology. For the conservative dogmatists of Mars, Call's work is the ultimate heresy, a path that leads directly to the sin that created the Dark Mechanicus. Call's influence is so vast that he cannot be everywhere at once. To communicate with Robot Guilliman, he employs a remote interlocutor known as the Call Inferior. There is intense debate within the Mechanicus as to whether this device is a simple communication tool, a sophisticated AI, which is absolute heresy, or something even more strange that this embodies the political war now raging within the Adeptus Mechanicus. The conservative fabricator general of Mars and his allies view Call as a dangerous radical. Yet they cannot move against him because he has the full backing of the returned avenging son, Robot Guilliman, the de facto ruler of the Imperium. Call's very existence has created a schism as deep as any theological debate, paralyzing the upper echelons of the cult Mechanicus. Call's radicalism is not an isolated case. Other events test the Mechanicus's boundaries. The existence of the Steel Confessors chapter, a Space Marine chapter secretly created and controlled by a Forge world, was a blatant violation of the Treaty of Olympus Mons and Imperial law, showing how far some elements will go to ensure their own survival and influence. Furthermore, the Styges 8 Forge world has been repeatedly censured for its Xenorite tendencies, its obsession with studying and even utilizing Xenos technology, particularly that of the Eldari and Necrons, bringing it repeatedly into conflict with the Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition. So, what is the future of the Adeptus Mechanicus? It is a future balanced on a knife's edge. They are the Imperium's lifeline, without whom the entire war machine would grind to a halt within a century. Yet they are also its greatest bottleneck, stifling progress with dogma. They face existential threats on all sides. The consuming Tyranids, the reality-defying chaos of the Dark Mechanicus, the inexorable Necrons, and the innovative Tau. To survive these threats, they may need to embrace the very heresy they have sworn to destroy. Can they accept Call's path? Or will they cling to their rituals as the galaxy burns around them? From its birth in the wastelands of Mars to its pivotal role in the Horus heresy, from its rigid hierarchy to its terrifying military might, the Adeptus Mechanicus remains a pillar of the Imperium, flawed and magnificent. They are the keepers of a dying flame, guarding knowledge they can no longer fully comprehend, serving a god they can only glimpse through ritual. They are the necessary guardians of a terrible past, trapped in an eternal present, fearful of a future they are no longer equipped to build. In the end, the Adeptus Mechanicus is the tragic, powerful, and paradoxical heart of the Imperium's struggle to survive. A human faith that denies humanity, forever seeking a truth lost in the shadows of a golden age long since past. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.